What is going on, guys? This is Dan here, and in this video, I am going to be answering the following question, which you see on your screen right now, and that is, where is AI going, and what does it mean for your business? If you're new to the channel, my name is Daniel, and I help businesses implement AI effectively so they can become a much more efficient organization. I've been working in AI for 7 years, 3 of which were building, training AI models for big enterprises. And what I want to do is really just help answer that question. There's a lot of concern online. There's a lot of fear around AI. What does it mean for my business? How do I get started? A lot of people don't really know, and they don't really see where it's going. So I want to try to clarify that in this video. The first thing I want to really touch on is how this technology is being perceived. And the truth that I want to kind of present here is that most people are skeptical of new technology. So regardless, right now we see AI, people are very skeptical of whether it's actually good at what it does. Like, can it actually replace me? That's a very common way of thinking. And this is not new. This happens to all technology. All technology, there are people that believe it's rubbish, and there's people that have a lot of doubts and concerns about it. And here are 2 prominent examples. So the very first one is cars. So when cars came out in the late 19th century, early 20th century, first things first, people saw them as very unreliable, which they were at the time, especially compared to a horse. And another thing that they had is they had all these huge concerns with it. Like they looked at cars as being silent manslaughter. So they looked at people driving recklessly on the roads that weren't really designed for cars, and they saw a lot of accidents. They saw, pedestrians getting hit, people driving erratically, causing accidents. They also saw the noise, dust, and pollution that it produced as a huge problem. So they looked at it and they said, okay, well, horses don't produce as the same amount of pollution. And they also looked at it as destroying the rural economy. So they looked at all the businesses that supported the horse economy, like, producing food for the horses, building saddles, etc. And they saw cars as this invasive thing that were taking those jobs away and destroying the livelihood of those people. And so there were many people that said, okay, this is a really bad thing. And there were other people as well that said this isn't going to take off because it's not as good, it's not reliable. But what we know today is that everyone has cars, right? Cars are completely universal across the entire world. There isn't a civilization right now, well, as far as I know, that is solely relying on horses to get by. Every single country, every single place relies on cars because cars are so useful that they've just made our lives so much easier, and therefore people are, full steam ahead on cars, on the technology that improved their lives. And it's not to say that these things, the concerns, don't have any truth to them, and in many ways they do, but it didn't change the fact that cars were adopted. So that is the first thing to really understand, is that technology follows this kind of pattern. Now, one that's a little bit closer to home, computers. So when computers came out in around the late 1950s, early 1960s, when they started to get quite useful, people made a lot of predictions about computers. The first one is that people were very skeptical about its actual ability to do calculations, to compute numbers. And then as well as that, like, once people started to see the value in it, they had a lot of other concerns. So mass unemployment, which might sound very familiar to the AI situation that we have today. Loss of privacy. So people viewed computers as aiding in things like government surveillance of their citizens and storing data digitally. They saw as a threat. There is probably some truth to that as well as dehumanization. So they looked at computers, since computers were doing the work of people, they looked at our civilization as being less human and more robotic, data-driven. And honestly, there's probably a lot of truth to many of those, except I would say the mass unemployment one. Yes, it did displace people at the start, but as you can see, like the computer industry made massive job increases actually. So that is something to consider. So a really good example of how computers weren't trusted and people were skeptical of them at the start of their technological advancement is this example over here. So NASA was launching John Glenn into space, and before they launched him, he was skeptical of the IBM computer that NASA had to run the orbital calculations. So what he did is he has this famous quote, which is, "Get the girl to check the numbers." And this was Katherine Johnson, whose job was a human computer at NASA. And NASA had a room full of people. All the big companies at the time had rooms full of people whose job was just to do calculations, computation. And this was the computation that ultimately computers were found to be reliable to do, and they replaced this job entirely. But at the time in the 60s, people didn't trust the computers, and they still had this skepticism about them, and they wanted humans to actually do the job that the machines would ultimately replace. So now that we understand how technology is perceived, I want to give a prediction of exactly how AI is going to change the way that we work based on the understanding of how computers change work. So if we look at this is how work was done before computers. Okay, so if you were to think about this as the layers of an organization, of layers of a company, we have humans here at every single level. So we have humans that will do decision making based on their experience. This could be at the senior role, or it could also be at any different role in the company, right? Because every single role has decisions that need to be made and experiences, right? And we would have humans that do this. Then we would also have humans that need to do the specific task. So basically, if you said, I need to grow my business, and in order to do that, I need to create ads and I need to run the ads, right? That can be an example. So the creating the ads and running the ads would be part of this layer over here, the tasks and the jobs that need to be done. And there would be a human that is here that needs to actually perform these tasks. Now, before computers, if there's a job that required heavy computation, they would also need to do that. So you can imagine that as being calculating revenue, for example, would be a really good one. Or maybe delivering a product. If the product had to do calculations, you would have a person down here with a pen and paper running calculations. And that would be the organization, right? Without the computers. It was very tedious. There was a lot of work that needed to be done. What happened is when computers came along, we had something like this. And what this is that we still have the decision makers, the people who make the decisions based on their experience. We still have the tasks that need to be done, sending invoices, writing job ads, calculating revenue, delivering the product. But what we have now is, because we had computers and we had this essentially like a middle layer between the tasks that need to be done and the actual computation that we need for those tasks. We started to develop apps such as things like Stripe, Canva, Gmail, QuickBooks, Excel, whatever you consider. All of these are computation-based software that allows the person at this layer to do the tasks that they need to do easier. And that's what happened. We basically removed the human at this layer who had to do the real grunt work. And now we just have the human who needs to do the decision making, the experience, as well as the task and the job to be done. So what we have is we have a user who's using some kind of operating system, some kind of middleman, whether that is Windows or it's Android or it's Mac OS, doesn't really matter. But we have some kind of middleman that allows the user to access compute very easily. And what they can do is any task that they have, they can use Excel, Word, Gmail, Chrome for doing research, Slack, coding editors, in order to actually accomplish the task they need to do. So what is happening with AI is this. So right now, what I can see happening is that before we had a person over here that is doing the actual task, the job, whether it's sending the invoice, writing the job ad, calculating revenue, delivering the product. And then we have the compute middleman. Right now, what we're doing is we're adding another middleman layer over here, right, with these tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, it doesn't really matter. But what we have is we have the human who's still doing the decision making. They have the experience, and they also have the judgment to see whether the task is being done well or not. And what we have is we have a layer here where these AI systems, these agents, are going to be tackling the task itself, because they are actually learning how to use the tools, right? Like whether it's Stripe, Canva, Gmail, QuickBooks, the AI can actually access. They know what task needs to be done. They have access to the operating system, and they can connect with these tools in order to accomplish the task. So we're basically abstracting away the person who needs to do the task to be the person that's doing the decision making, the experience, who has the experience, and also needs to make the judgment calls. So what I can see happening is that before we had a user who is accessing compute via the middleman, which would be Microsoft Windows in my example. Now what we're having is we have a user who wants to get tasks done, and we have an operating system, which you can call the AI operating system, which is the middleman between the user and the tasks that need to get done. So what we do is we use our experience, our decision making to tell our AI operating system what task we want done. And then that task is going to be conducted and handled by the AI. So that is how things are going to play out. That is how it's playing out right now. And just like we have up here, we have these crafted computational apps like Excel, Word, Gmail. All of these are basically using compute in different ways to help us access the compute. People and businesses are going to design and are designing their own different instruction manuals for AI to accomplish these tasks, and building basically a library or a suite of apps that allow the middleman, the AI operating system that you have, to do the work for you. And this is where things are going. This is where the technology is going. This is where the business is going. Now, the reason you can see this happening is if you look at how the technology is changing from 2023 or late 2022 when this came out and 2024, this is what things looked like, right? So you would give a prompt to a LLM like ChatGPT, and then it would just spin something back. And that was the loop that we had. That was how the technology was behaving, right? You would give it instructions, and then the only thing it could really do is write it out. And many times you had to provide such a refined and you had to craft such a long prompt and detailed prompt that it would almost be as much as the work that you needed to do, right? So if it was like writing a job ad, the prompt would need to be almost as big as the job ad itself in order to make it good. And it was quite tedious, but there was a lot of promise to the technology. There were still many things that you could do with it, but it was limited to this specific use case. And there wasn't a lot of ROI or value that was being produced by using AI. And if you're still using AI this way, which a lot of people still are, then you might need a wake-up call in terms of where it currently is, which I'm going to show you right now. So right now, this is kind of the lay of the land at this current time. And you can say to an AI system, every Friday, log into QuickBooks and process all the invoices. And you can say that to Claude, for example, and because we're not just dealing with a basic LLM anymore, and we're dealing with agents that can access tools and make decisions and progress through an instruction set, it can do a lot of really powerful things. And this is just one example. So it can access a skill library. So you can provide all your business SOPs to your AI. And it can, anytime you say something like process invoices, it can go into that library and it can access the exact specific way that you like to process invoices. It can also connect to different tools and systems. Over here we have MCPs, and what that basically means is that your AI can connect to the different services that you have, whether it's QuickBooks or it's Word or it's Excel, or Sheets. whatever it is, whatever system you use, whatever app you use in your day-to-day work, your AI can now connect to. So it can read the SOP that you have, the process of how to do the task, and it can connect to the tools that you usually would use in order to accomplish the task. It can also access your computer, so it can leave reports on your computer. It can organize the folders, the files, and clean things up for you. It can do not only access the internet, but it can also access your internal computer to handle tasks for you. As well as that, it can work on a scheduler. So you don't even need to prompt it directly. Like you could have, when you write this specific instructions, Claude can actually use a scheduler, and he can run that instructions every single Friday or every single day. Whatever it is that you want to get done, he can do it on repeat without you even needing to tell him, right? So we no longer need to prompt every single time. We can actually just run these things on a schedule. So that's where the lay of the land is right now, is that you can do so many powerful things, and you can really kind of make this scenario come to life where, you will just instruct your AI and he will do all of the tasks and all of the jobs for you. So very powerful stuff. So I know this does sound, it can be quite scary, especially if you haven't learned AI yet, or you don't understand many of the tools or things that I'm discussing, such as skills, MCPs, all of these things. It can be quite terrifying, and you might not know where to start. And the best way to start is not to just pick up any random tool and to try to see how it fits in your business. The best way to start is to really reflect internally. And the thing that will actually make you efficient when using AI, number one, first of all, most important thing is list out all the tasks you do every day in your business. Okay, I don't recommend that you try to use AI to do some fancy new amazing thing. What it should do is it should try to make the things that you do right now much more efficient, because that will free up your time rather than consume more of it. So the first thing to do is, if you don't know what you do on repeat every single day or every single week in your business, list those things out and list them out in detail to the point where you could turn them into an SOP. If you do that, and once you've done that, what you should do next is really map out the lay of the land. What is the processes that happen inside your business? And then identify which ones of those are the most repetitive, the most prone to human error. And if you can find those out, once you have it mapped out in front of you, it's much easier for you to identify what those things are. What are the things that are consuming the most amount of time? What are the things that, if I had an assistant, I would give away immediately to them because they're so painful to do? Then finally, once you've mapped those out and you understand what the pain points are, then you can start to design the AI and the AI skills or solutions that will enable you to reduce your workload, shrink the time that it takes for those tasks to get done, because no longer do you have to do most of the task. What you have to do is just instruct the AI on how to do it, and then it will go out and do it, and then you can just judge whether it did the task correctly or not. So the huge block of work that you had to do is going to be delegated to the AI, and that is how you're going to get the massive gains, the 2x, 3x, even 10x in many jobs. Situations. That's how you're going to get that gain, is by doing that process. So if you want to be able to do this inside your business and you need some help, there's going to be a link in the description where you can book a call with me and we can have a chat about how to implement AI in your business. If you're a recruiter and you want to learn how to use AI, we are building a community of recruiters that want to learn how to implement AI effectively. You can get started by clicking the link in the description. It's completely free, and you can also get set up for free as well with your own AI desk. So that is it for me in this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.